Hey everybody, welcome to my channel, The Magical Solution. My name is Leilani. We are live here on TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and we are moving forward with our book club. Today, we are continuing our read of The Gospel According to Spiritism by Allan Kardec. And we will be picking up where we left off yesterday, actually, which is chapter 18. Now, hey, Aoife! What's up, goddess? If you're joining me for the first time here, do not feel threatened if you were not here for the previous books that we've read, because this is the third book in a series, and this will be the last book that we will read as a book club, even though there are 5 altogether. But do not feel intimidated. You can stay because I do commentary throughout the entire read to kind of keep you guys with me, okay? And most importantly, if you do want to catch up, just go to my YouTube channel, The Magical Solution. You know how this goes, right? So let's do it. We are on chapter 18, and the title of this chapter is entitled Many Are Called, but Few Are Chosen. Now, I know yesterday we talked about what the ideal spiritist looks like according to Spiritism, right? We talked about, the moral and intellectual and the ethical stuff that spiritists are kind of held to in order to be called themselves that, which again, I mentioned yesterday, it's a little bit elitist, just a smidge, it definitely makes an us versus them kind of vibe. And, nobody likes that. But we're going to move forward with this because it's important to take what you can from it and leave the rest, right? The subcategories in this chapter are Parable of the Wedding Feast, The Narrow Door, Not all those who say, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Much will be asked of him who has received much. And then the last part of the chapter is the Spirit's teachings, where he quotes spirits that he has interviewed. And the first teaching is going to be on, to him who already has, more will be given. And the second teaching will be on Christians shall be recognized by their deeds. Now, once again, these books are heavily written in Christian sort of verbiage, right? And this particular book, in particular, is kind of catered to reaching out the Christian and Catholic community to sort of make the case of what Spiritism is. And so in this book, they quote a lot of passages from the Bible, specifically what Jesus said, and then they interpret it through the lens of Spiritism. So that's what we're doing. So the parable of the wedding feast, right? So this is a parable that we find in Matthew 22, verses 1 through 14. And the parable goes as such. Speaking further through parables, Jesus said to them, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who, wanting to give his son a wedding feast, sent his servants to call on those whom he had invited. However, they refused to come. The king then sent other servants with orders to tell the invitees, I have prepared the feast. I have slaughtered the fattened cattle. Everything is ready. Come to the wedding feast. However, they were not concerned, and one went to his house in the country, and another to his business. The other seized his servants and killed them after having badly mistreated them. And when the king found out, he was filled with anger, and having sent his armies, he exterminated those murdered and burned their cities. He then said to his servants, the wedding feast has been fully prepared, but those who had been invited were not worthy of it. So go to the crossroads and call to the wedding feast all whom you meet. And his servants went into the streets and gathered all those whom they met, both good and bad, and the wedding hall was filled with people who sat at the table. The king then entered to see who were at the table, and noticing a man who was not wearing a wedding garment, he said to him, "My friend, why have you come in without a wedding garment?" And the man remained silent. And then the king told his servants, "Bind his hands and his feet and cast him into the outer darkness. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth, for many are called, but few are chosen." Ooh, so let's see what Spiritism has to say about this. Let's see what it has to say. So, disbelievers smile at the seemingly childish, naive parable because they cannot understand why so many problems could arise in order to attend a feast, and even less why the invitees would extend their resistance to the point of massacring those sent by the master of the house. Parables, they say, are of course figurative. But even so, they shouldn't go beyond the limits of plausibility. The same can be said about all of the allegories, as well as the most ingenious fables, if one does remove their outer covering in order to find their hidden meaning. Jesus composed his with the order. No, I'm sorry. Jesus composed his with the commonest habits of life and adapted them to the customs and the character of the people to whom he spoke. So therefore, most of his parables were meant to instill in the masses the idea of the spiritual life. Their meaning often seems unintelligible only because they are not regarded from this point of view. In particular, the parable that Jesus compares the kingdom of heaven, where everything is joy and happiness, to a feast. In speaking of the first invitees, he makes an allusion to the Hebrews, whom God called first to the knowledge of his law. Those sent by the masters are the prophets, who come to exhort them to follow the way of true happiness. But their words were listened to very little, their warnings were scorned, and many were even massacred like servants in the parable. The invitees, who make excuses under the pretext of looking after their fields and their businesses, symbolize persons of the world who, absorbed in their own earthly matters, are indifferent toward heavenly matters. Among the Jews back then, it was common belief that their nation was to achieve supremacy over all others. Had not God, in fact, promised Abraham that his progeny would cover the entire earth? However, as always, taking the form for the substance, they believed in an actual material domination. So before the coming of Christ, except for the Hebrews, all other peoples were idolatrous and polytheistic. If a few extraordinary individuals conceived of the idea of divine oneness, this idea remained in the state of a personal theory and was in no way accepted as a fundamental truth, except by a few initiates who hid their knowledge under a veil of mystery impenetrable by the masses. The Hebrews were the first to publicly practice monotheism. It was to them that God transmitted his divine law, first through Moses and then through Jesus. Pause really quick. So I'm sensing the harsh language and view towards Hebrews, and I think it's important to note once again the time that this was written, by whom it was written, the context that it was written, right? So we want to kind of just be mindful of that piece. And we also want to be mindful that the science and the archaeology and all that fun stuff that we love to learn about today, they haven't gotten all of that information yet. So to him, the Hebrews were the first to practice monotheism. Of course, we all know monotheism is a much, much older concept that started long before that. So it was to them that God transmitted his divine law, first through Moses and then through Jesus. From this tiny focal point began the light that was to spread over the entire world, triumph over paganism, and give Abraham a spiritual progeny as numerous as the stars in the firmament. Although they had rejected idolatry, the Jews had neglected the moral law, adhering instead to the easier practice of outward forms. Evil had reached its peak. The nation had become dominated and was split by the factions and divided by sects. Disbelief itself had even entered the sanctuary. It was then that Jesus appeared. He was sent to remind them to observe the law and to open to them the new horizons of the future of life. The first to be invited to the great banquet of universal faith. They rejected the word of the heavenly Messiah and put him to death. Thus, they lost the fruit they were to have reaped from their own initiative. It would be unjust, however, to accuse an entire people for such a state of affairs. Thank you, at least he recognized that. That responsibility fell mainly to the Pharisees and the Sadducees, who sacrificed their nation due to the pride and fanaticism of the former and the disbelief of the latter. They were the ones whom Jesus compares above all to the invitees who refused to come to the wedding feast. He then adds, "The master, upon seeing this, ordered all those who could be found in the crossroads to be invited, both good and bad." With this, he wanted to say that the word would be proclaimed to all other peoples, both pagan and idolatrous, and that, upon believing, they would be admitted to the feast in the place of those who had been invited first. Nevertheless, it's not enough simply to be invited. It is not enough simply to take the name Christian or to sit at a table to take part in a heavenly banquet. Before anything else, and as an express condition, it is necessary to be dressed in a wedding garment, which means to have a pure heart and to practice the law according to its spirit. The law is contained in its entirety in these words: "Without charity, there is no salvation." Among all of those who hear the divine word, however, how few there are who keep it and practice it. How few make themselves worthy to enter the kingdom of heaven. And that is why Jesus said, "Many will be called, but few will be chosen." Bitch, tell me that that's not like profound. That's so nice. Anyway, I don't think I need to interpret that for you guys. I really don't think I need to interpret that. I think you get this. I think it hits home. I know people feel this. But if you have questions, please, please, please drop them in the comments and I'll make sure to address them before the end of the video. Now we're on the next subcategory of the chapter. And this category, the narrow door. They're going to be quoting Matthew chapter 14, verses 13 and 14, and they're going to be quoting Luke chapter 13, verses 23 and 30. And this is what it says. "Enter through the narrow door, for the door to perdition is wide, and the path leading to it is broad, and there are many who enter through it. How small is the door to life! How narrow is the path that leads to it, and how few are there who find it." Someone asked him this question, "Lord, will only a few be saved?" And he responded, "Strive to enter through the narrow door, for I assure you that many will try to enter, though they will not be able to. And once the father of the family has entered and shut the door, and you, being outside, start knocking and saying, 'Lord, open to us,' he will answer, 'I do not know where you have come from.' And then you will say, 'We ate and drank with you, and you taught us in our public squares.' And he will respond, 'I do not know where you have come from. Away from me, all you who have practiced iniquity.' Then there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth when you see Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and all the prophets in the kingdom of God, while you yourselves have been thrown out. Many will come from the east and from the west, from the north and from the south, those who will have a place at the feast in the kingdom of God. Hence, those who are last shall be first, and those who were first shall be last. What do you think Spiritism has to say about this? I don't know. I don't know. We will see. So, what they're saying here is that the door to perdition is wide because the bad passions are many, and the pathway to evil is frequent by the majority. The door to salvation is narrow because those who want to go through it must make a great effort to control themselves in order to overcome their bad tendencies. And few resign themselves to doing so. It is the complement of to the maxim, many are called, but few are chosen. Such is the current state of Earth's humankind, because since the Earth is a world of expiation, evil predominates on it. When it is transformed, the pathway to goodness will be the one most frequented. These words, therefore, should be understood in the relative sense and not in the absolute sense. If there were to be a normal state of humankind, God would have intentionally condemned the vast majority of individuals to perdition, an unacceptable supposition if one acknowledges God as entirely just and good. So please understand that, right? So when we learn this back in the Spirits book, we learn this back in the Mediums book, that this earthly plane of existence, and we've also established in these previous books that there are infinite planes of existence and infinite occupants of those planes of existence, and each plane of existence is in accordance with the progress of the spirits within it, right? So those of us who are here on Earth's plane, we all vibe at the same vibe, right? And he wants to let you know that because this is sort of that middle ground, it's kind of like a training course. It's kind of like a stage of temptations, right? So according to this, the Christian and Catholic thought is that, you're being tested constantly. And because we're in the material and physical plane, we tend to be more predisposed to the more animalistic, more base level urges and desires and passions. And we have a more base level understanding of our emotions, right? And so when he talks about the narrow door here in this parable, he's basically saying, if you're trying to get through the door to come to me, understand that squeezing through is going to be difficult because you have to shed those base desires, those urges. You have to shed your vibe. Like, you can't be vibing at 3D Earth level no more. Like, you can't. You got to, work it out, right? Now, but what if wrongful actions, could humankind make itself guilty to deserve such a fate in its present and in its future if it has been completely relegated to the earth, and if the soul has not had other existences? Why are there so many obstacles sown along the way? Why such a narrow door that allows only a small number to pass through if the soul's fate is sealed forever after death? In this way, with only one lifetime, humankind is in a constant conflict both with itself and the justice of God. On the other hand, with the prior existence of the soul and the plurality of worlds, the horizon has broadened. Light is shed on the most obscure points of faith. The present and the future are in solidarity with the past. Only then can one understand all the depth and all the truth and all the wisdom of Christ's maxims. Now, let's pause here, you guys. So this is where he distinguishes what Spiritism is versus the Christian Catholic ideas, right? He says with Spiritism that because we believe in reincarnation, because we have so many lifetimes, and because those lifetimes are all connected, past, present, and future don't mean anything. It's all connected through your soul, through your spirit self. And when you understand this idea of going through the narrow doorway is no longer an issue about being tested or being punished or feeling like you only got one shot at this. You know what I mean? Like either I'm either going to be super good and go to hell, or I'm going to make just one tiny mistake, super good and go to heaven, or make one tiny mistake and just say, fuck it, I'm going to hell, so I might as well just party and go crazy. Right? Whereas Spiritism is like, no, you get many times to do this, and your goal is to get through that narrow door. That's the goal, you know. Okay, so the next subcategory is not all those who say Lord, Lord will enter the kingdom of heaven. So they're going to quote Matthew chapter 7, verse 21 through 23, Matthew chapter 7, verse 24 to 27, and Luke chapter 4, verses 46 to 49, and Matthew chapter 5, verse 19. They're short, though. They're really, that sounded like a lot, but they're short. Not all who say, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven. Only those will enter who have done the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on the day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? Did we not cast out demons in your name? And did we not perform many miracles in your name? And I will tell them clearly, away from me, you have done deeds of iniquity. Be really... Okay, so this is a biblical passage, and Spiritism is going to speak on it, but I kind of want to speak on it first, right? So what he's describing here, what the Bible is actually describing here, are mediums. These are mediums. These are people with gifts. Did we not prophesy in your name? Did we not cast out demons in your name? And did we not perform miracles in your name? These are people who have gifts, who can heal, who can exorcise. These are spiritual people. And Jesus is still kicking them out. Why? Because they didn't live the truth. They practice those things for the fun of it. They practice those things for all other egoistic, vanity type reasons, not for their progression or the progression that of the people that they are serving, right? And so that's where the difference is. Now, Christians and Catholics would read this and immediately condemn all mediumship, all healing, all exorcisms, all miracle, all those things, prophesying. They would immediately condemn that as being something Jesus did not like, but that's not what Jesus said. Jesus didn't say he didn't want them to prophesize. He didn't say he didn't want them to cast out demons, and he didn't say he didn't want them to perform miracles. He simply said, you have done those deeds of iniquity, like out of your own bullshit, not for me. You know what I'm saying? So we'll get back to that. Therefore, everyone who hears my words and practices them may be compared to a wise man who built his house upon a rock. And when the rain fell, the rivers flooded, and the winds blew and battered the house. It did not fall because it had been built upon the rock. But anyone who hears my words and does not practice them is like a foolish man who built his house upon sand. And when the rain falls and the river floods and the wind blows, it is battered and caved in, and great was its ruin. He who breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men to break them will be regarded as last in the kingdom of heaven. But he who abides by my teachings, them will be great in the kingdom of heaven. Okay. So those who proclaim Jesus' mission say, Lord, Lord. But what use is it to call him master or Lord if they do not follow his precepts, right? So are Christians those who honor him with outward acts of devotion, but who at the same time yield to pride and selfishness and greed and all the passions? Are his disciples those who spend their days in prayer, but who, as a result, are neither better nor more charitable nor more indulgent toward their fellow beings? No, because just like the Pharisees, their prayer is on their lips, but not in their heart. They might impress others with their form, but not God. In vain they will say to Jesus, Lord, we prophesied, that is, we taught in your name, we cast out demons in your name, we ate and drank with you. And he will answer to them, I do not know who you are. Away from me, you who committed iniquities, you who belied your words with your actions, you who slandered your neighbors and robbed widows and committed adultery. Away from me, you whose hearts distilled hatred and bile, you who split the blood of your brothers and sisters in my name, you who caused tears to run instead of drying them. For you there shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth, for the kingdom of God is for those who are kind and humble and charitable. Do not expect to bend the Lord's justice because of the multiplicity of your words or the genuflections. The only way open to you for finding grace before God is that of sincerely practicing the law of love and charity. And Jesus' words were eternal because they are the truth. They are not only a surety for life in heaven, but also a pledge of peace, tranquility, stability in matters of regarding life on earth. That is why all human political, social, and religious institutions that are based on his words will be stable as the house built upon the rock. People will keep them because they will find happiness in them. However, those who are in violation of his words will be like the house built upon sand, and the winds of transformation and the river of progress will bring them down. Pause. Let's pause for a second. Because those of us who live in America, we have this special little law called the separation of church and state. And that special little law is there for a reason. Okay. So that last little sentence of the paragraph where he was like, once these Christian ideologies get absorbed into the socio-political, backdrop, then all will be great. This was written once again at a time where it was kind of like one type of people practicing one type of thing in sort of like the upper classes. So it's a very utopian, idealistic, very optimistic point of view, but it's not realistic. So please. Okay. So now we're on the next subcategory, which is much will be asked of him who has received much. So this is the last category before we get into the teaching spirits. So we're going to quote here from the Bible, Luke chapter 12, verses 47 to 48, and John chapter 9, verses 39 to 41. The servant who knew his master's the servant who knew his master's will, but who nevertheless has neither prepared himself nor done what was expected of him, will be harshly punished. But he who did not know his master's will, but who has done things worthy of punishment, will be punished less. Much will be asked of him who has received much, and a greater accounting will be required from those to whom many things have been entrusted. I have come into this world to exercise judgment, so that those who do not see may see, and those who do not see may be who and those who do see may become blind. Upon hearing these words, certain Pharisees who were with him said to him, "Then are we blind also?" And Jesus answered them, "If you were blind, you would not have sinned. But you now say that you see, and that is why sin remains in you." Okay, let's get into it. So these maxims, they find their application especially in the Spirit's teachings. All those who know the precepts of Christ are surely blameworthy if they do not practice them. But besides the fact that the gospel that contains them has spread only in the Christian denominations, how many persons there are amongst them who do not read it? And of those who do read it, how many there are who do not understand it? The result is that Jesus' own words have been lost to the majority. And so the Spirit's teachings, which reproduce these maxims under different forms and develop and comment on them in order to put them within everyone's reach, have the particularity of not being at all circumscribed, and everyone, literate or illiterate, believing or disbelieving, Christian or not, can receive them because spirits communicate everywhere. None who receive them either directly or through an intermediary can claim ignorance of them. They cannot offer as an excuse either their lack of instruction or their obscurity of the teachings, allegorical meaning. Thus, those who do not take advantage of the teachings for their advancement, who admire them as being interesting and curious without their hearts being touched by them, who are no less vain, no less proud, no less selfish, no less attached to the material possessions, or who are not better toward their neighbor, are all the more guilty because they have a greater means of knowing about the truth. So basically, you're guilty by association. Like all of you who are watching me on TikTok, you who are watching me on Facebook and YouTube, the minute you come into these lives to learn about Spiritism, to understand these moral doctrines, to get a better understanding from an intellectual standpoint how to progress your spirit, you now have no choice. Like you now have no choice because now you are aware of this information, and turning your back on it or saying no to it, you're that much more the guilty when time comes. And again, this is according to the Catholic Christian sort of idea, right? But when it comes to spiritists, it's only those who identify themselves as a spiritist or a spiritualist, only those who identify themselves as mediums, spiritistas, psychics, and all that, all of those who profess to have read the doctrines, those are the ones that the spiritists are talking about with regards to being guilty if they turn their back on it or do not practice it. Mediums who receive good communications are even more blameworthy for persisting in wrongdoing, for they often write their own condemnation. And if they were not so blinded by pride, they would realize that the spirits are addressing them. However, instead of applying to themselves the lessons that they write or those they see written, their sole thought is to apply them to others, thereby confirming these words of Jesus. You see a speck in your neighbor's eye, but you do not see the log in your own. Through these words, if you were blind, you would have not sinned. Jesus meant that blameworthiness is proportional to one's enlightenment, meaning the more you know, the more you are accountable for. the more responsibility you have with regards to that knowledge. And thus, the Pharisees, who had the intention of being and actually were the most enlightened individuals of their people, were more reprehensible in God's eyes than the unlearned people. The same applies today. Therefore, much will be asked of Spiritists because they have received much, but also to those who have taken advantage of the teachings, much will be given. The first thought of all sincere Spiritists should be to find out if in the Spirit's counsel there is not something that might concern them. Spiritism has multiplied the number of those who are called because of the faith it provides. It also will multiply the number of those who are chosen. So, to bring everything back into perspective, okay, when you take up the mantle of calling yourself a Spiritist, when you take on the responsibility of truly integrating that practice into your life, it becomes apparent how easy it is to live this way, because your good deeds and your merit speaks for itself, and it starts to spread like wildfire, right? And what ends up happening is we teach these things, we exemplify and model these things, and then others want to be a part of it, right? Everyone wants to join. Everyone wants to be a psychic medium. Everyone wants to talk to spirits. And all the messages that spirits give them goes out there. And that's a problem, right? But we'll get into that in a second. My point is that when you start modeling this, when you start taking up the mantle, many will come. Many will come to want to know what it is that you do, where you get your gifts from, what your faith is all about, all of that. And when you start teaching, people will want to be a part of it. But of those people, and just like you who made it through the pack, just like you who made it through the narrow door, of those people, the ones who integrate it, the ones who live and practice the true role of a spiritist, spiritualist, a spiritista, psychic medium of Kardec tradition, you will see among them a few chosen, just like you. And that's important. And those are the ones you definitely want to embrace, and you definitely want to encourage to continue modeling that behavior and teaching that behavior wherever they can. And to the rest, you just simply have to wait, because again, it's about each person's level of progression and the rate, the speed at which they want to go, the rate at which their mind and emotions and spirit can handle and absorb and understand these teachings. And there are just some people that it's going to take a couple of lifetimes, and that's okay. Right? To each his own, right? Now, to get back just for a second to everyone wants to be a medium and have these gifts, but the minute that they start getting these teachings from spirits, the minute they start communicating with spirits and getting this feedback, the problem is that these mediums immediately start to see, holy shit, this really does work. This really is a thing, and I'm going to make money from it. Because that's the world we live in, right? And that's the problem. Instead of saying, I'm getting these messages, these things are coming through, what parts of it can I use to progress me? And from that progression, the nuggets of wisdom that are meant for everybody else will reveal itself, will come forward. That's really important, This is why so many elders, so many madrinas, padrinos, so many espiritistas and spiritists who have been doing this for a long time will always tell you to spend time with your spirits and really, really integrate what it is that they're saying. Really try and figure out within your life how you can create examples and create memories and create systems of understanding for yourself. This is why they'll say that. Usually they say go meditate or go spend time alone with your spirits, right? Whatever the instruction is, do it, right? Yay! So now we're on the last part of the chapter, which is the spirits teachings, right? And there was two teachings. The first one is going to be from Spirit. He has no name. They just call him a spirit friend. And they interviewed this spirit friend in Bordeaux, France in 1862. And he's going to be talking about to whom who already has, more will be given. That's the topic. So the spirit is actually going to quote a couple of verses in the Bible before the spirit speaks. He's going to quote Matthew chapter 13, verses 10 through 14, and Mark chapter 4, verses 24 to 25. His disciples approached him and asked, "Why do you speak to them in parables?" And he responded, "Because to you it has been given to know the mysteries of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. For to him who already has, more will be given, and he will have in abundance. But regarding him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away. And that is why I speak to them in parables. For seeing, they see nothing. For hearing, they neither hear nor understand. And the prophecy of Isaiah is fulfilled in them when he said, 'You will hear with your ears, but will not understand. You will see with your eyes, but will not perceive anything.' Pay close attention regarding what you hear, because the same measure will be used on you that you have used to measure others, and you will be given even more. For to him who already has, more will be given, and regarding him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away." So this actually was talked about in the Spirits book, the very first book that we read, and it was yes, it was in the Spirits. No, it was in the Mediums book. It was in the Mediums book. Anyway, but it has to do with the fact that some people will do everything in their power not to understand you. These are those devil's advocate people. These are those but people. These are those, you know what I mean? And I'm not talking about it from like a scientific, like, how can we progress this and move this idea further, but from a place of like, I don't see it. I don't get it. What are you talking about? Whatever. You know, just a very like careless perspective, because they just don't have the ability to see or hear what it is that you're talking about. That's not where they're vibing right now. And again, that is okay. And so to Jesus was like, "Yo, this shit is like, these are pearls, okay? And I can't be giving this shit to everybody. I can't. Because the minute it comes off of my lips and you are aware of it, you are now responsible for it. The problem is that these things will come off of my lips. Some of you will not understand it. Some of you will not get it. But the damage has been done, and you will be responsible for it regardless. And what ends up happening is that the excuse of ignorance will not work in this scenario. And so a lot of bad luck will follow you. The reality is that if you engage in these practices without truly knowing what it is, If you claim certain titles, or if you do certain things without fully understanding its full context, you can harm yourself. And Jesus is basically saying, what I have here is both your freedom and liberation, but it can also be the death of you if you don't know what the fuck you're doing. And so that's why I speak in parables, because it's not for everybody. Jesus was a close practice, y'all. Jesus was a close practice. That's a really hot button topic on TikTok this week. So I kind of wanted to throw that out there. Anyway, so let's hear what the spirit friend has to say about these passages. So it will be given to him who already has, and it will be taken away from him who does not have. Meditate on these great teachings, which have so often seemed paradoxical to you. Those who have received are those who understand the meaning of the divine word. They have received solely because they have tried to become worthy, and the Lord, in his merciful love, encourages efforts that lead to goodness. These firm and persevering efforts attract the Lord's blessings. It is a magnet that calls to itself progression, advancement, and the abundant blessings that render you strong enough to climb the holy mountain, where at the summit is repose after labor. From him who has nothing, or who has little, it shall be taken away. Now this should be understood as a figurative opposite. God does not take away from his creatures the good he has consented to give them. Oh, you blind and deaf humanity. Open your mind and your heart and see with your spirit. Understand with your soul, and do not interpret in a so coarsely unjust manner the words of him who has made God's justice shine resplendently in your sight. It is not God who takes from those who have received little. It is their own spirit which, wasteful and careless, does not know how to preserve what it has, and by nurturing it, increase the might dropped in their heart. Those who do not cultivate the fields which their fathers' efforts earned for them, and which they have inherited, see that the fields become covered in weeds. Is it their father who takes away the harvest that they did not want to prepare? If they allowed the seeds meant to grow in that field to wither from lack of care, should they accuse their father if they produce nothing? No, of course not. Instead of accusing the one who had prepared everything for them of taking away his endowment, let them accuse the true author of their miseries, and let them then, repentant and industrious, courageously get to work. Let them break the thankless soil with the effort of their will. Let them plow deeply with the help of repentance and hope. Let them confidently sow the seed that they have chosen as good from among the bad, and let them water it with their love and charity. Then God, the God of love and charity, will give to them who have already received, and then they will see their efforts crowned with success, and one grain will produce 100 and another 1,000. Courage, O workers, take up your hoes and your plows, till your hearts, pull up the weeds from it, sow there the good seed that the Lord has entrusted to you, and the dew of love will enable it to produce the fruits of charity. Bitch, that spirit friend was a poet. That spirit is a poet. We don't have a name for him, but what he just said right there was poetry. Poetry. So, in a nutshell, right, we're looking at, just like in the previous chapter when we were describing what a moral spiritist is, and when we were describing what like the ideal spiritist is, they likened it to, you know, your body, your physical body being like a garden, right? They likened it to this idea that you must take care of this physical body, right? You must take care of the mind, you must take care of the emotions, you must take care of the spirit. All of this is a holistic practice that allows your garden and your soil to be fertile and moist and fresh and ready to receive. And what happens is that God is constantly sowing seeds. And these seeds may look like opportunities, job offers, a new house, birth of a child, these little seeds, these little blessings that come can now take root. Sometimes they come in the form of like a talent that you have. Are you a good singer? Are you really good in sports? Are you good in this? These are seeds that God has given you so that then you can till and work those seeds. So if you are a good singer, it is literally your duty to sing because you were given that talent. That is a seed. You must sow it and you must allow it to grow into whatever that turns into. It may not turn into shit. You might be a shower singer for the rest of your life. Who cares? Sing. Right? So that's pretty much what they're talking about here, because let's use that same example. Let's say you're given that seed to sing and you choose to ignore it. You choose to not do it. You don't want to do it at all. God is not going to punish you. God is not going to take away your voice. That's not how that works. But you know what is going to happen? Your voice is going to get rusty. Your vocal cords are going to get tight. You're going to get dry mouth a lot. And when you do, on the day that you do want to sing, on the day that you get drunk and you do want to get up and do karaoke, you're going to sound like shit. And that's not God's fault. Right? So that's what he's talking about. Whatever seeds he gives you, you cherish them and you honor them and you take care of them, even if you do nothing with them. And what I mean by nothing is even if you don't get recognition or a job, or which is not the purpose of them anyway, the fact that you engage in them and you take care of them, that is all he asks, right? That's what it's saying. All right, the very last spirit and the very last teaching is from the spirit of Simon, who was interviewed in Bordeaux, France in 1863, and he is going to be talking about how Christians shall be recognized by their deeds. So he's talking straight to the Christians here. Let's see what he says. Oh Lord. Not all of those who say to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who has done the will of my Father who is in heaven. Listen to these words of the Lord. All you who reject the Spiritist doctrine as a work of the devil, open your ears, for the time to listen has come. Is it enough to wear the uniform of the Lord to be a faithful servant? Is it enough to say, I am a Christian, to follow Christ? Look for the true Christians, and you will recognize them by their deeds. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, nor can a bad tree bear good fruit. Any tree that does not bear good fruit, cut it down and cast it into the fire. These are the Master's words. Disciples of Christ understand them well. What are the fruits that the tree of Christianity must bear? That mighty tree whose leafy branches cover part of the world with its shade, but which as yet does not shelter all those who should gather around it? The fruits of the tree of life, and the fruits of life, hope and faith. I'll say it again. The fruits of the tree of life are the fruits of life, hope and faith. Christianity, as it has done for many centuries, preaches these three divine virtues. It seeks to spread these fruits, but how few pick them. The tree is always good, but the gardeners are bad. They have wanted to fashion it according to their own ideas. They have wanted to mold it in accordance with their own needs. They have cut it, diminished it, and mutilated it. Its barren branches do not just bear bad fruit, they no longer bear any at all. Thirsty travelers who stop in its shade to look for the fruit of hope, which ought to restore their strength and courage, see only dry twigs announcing the coming storm. In vain, they look for the fruit of life on the tree of life. Its leaves fall dry, human hands have tampered with them so much that they have withered them. Therefore, open your ears and your hearts, dearly beloved. Cultivate that tree of life whose fruits give life eternal. The one who planted it invites you to care for it with love, and you will see it once again bearing its divine fruit in abundance. Keep it just as Christ gave it to you. Do not mutilate it. It wants to cast its immense shade over the entire universe. Do not cut it off its branches. Its beneficent fruit falls abundantly to nourish hungry travelers who want to reach their objective. Do not pick this fruit in order to hoard it and allow it to rot so that it is of no use to anyone. Many are called, but few are chosen. This is because there are monopolizers of the bread of life just as often there are of material bread. Do not align yourselves with them. The tree that bears good fruit must give it all. So go and seek out those who are hungry. Let them beneath the branches of the tree and share with them the shelter it offers. Grapes cannot be gathered from thorns. Many, my brothers and sisters, distance yourselves, therefore, from those who call you to show you the thorns along the way, and follow those who lead you to the shade of the tree of life. The divine Savior, the righteous one par excellence, spoke his words shall not pass away. Not all those who say to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only those who have done the will of my Father who is in heaven. May the Lord of blessings bless you. May the God of light illumine you. May the tree of life abundantly shed its fruit over you. Believe it and pray. What I love about this one is, you're being asked to nurture whatever gifts, whatever blessings, whatever talents. You're being called to nurture them and to allow them to take you wherever it takes you, right? And in the process, you will be rewarded with abundancy, whatever that looks like, of good abundancy. And in the interim, because you are nurturing and walking in truth, that abundancy becomes so much so that it overflows, and you are now capable of giving it all away, right? You are now able to provide someone else with hope and faith and charity because you have so much to give now. And there's no judgment in what you're offering. Let's go back to the singing example. If you see a homeless man on the street and you have nothing to give, you don't have a penny in your pocket, you only have the rags that you are wearing, right? You are as well-to-do as he is. But because you are given the seed of the voice, you walk up to him and you sing to him. He may take it. He may punch you in the face. He may run off. But the point is that you have an abundance of this. It is a blessing. It is a seed. And it is a gift from God to you, through you, to others. Hopefully that made sense. Anyway, we have finished the chapter 18. And I am now opening up the floor to questions about this chapter. Thank you guys, for hanging out with me for an hour. Yeah, let me know how you're doing. Comment where you're watching from. I would love to see. I love that. Purgatory Magic! Ah! Hi, honey. Oh, I love you so much. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Anyone who's watching this live now, make sure you follow Purgatory Magic on Instagram, especially on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok, on YouTube, all the places, you guys. Seriously. This is my brother in spirit. I love him dearly. He is so wise. He is so loving and so giving. And he is out here doing the mission, y'all. He's doing exactly, remember how we said a lot of responsibility is given to those who are aware, right? And this is one more aware motherfucker who is allowing his knowledge and his seeds to overflow, and he gives to others for free. And this information is crazy. So go please. Oh, okay, so you're the one. Okay, so on Facebook, it just says Facebook user. It doesn't say your name, so I didn't know who you were. Oh my gosh. Okay, well, see, now this is better. This is better. mm, mm. How are we doing, you guys? Everyone got quiet. I see y'all in there. I see you. Everyone got quiet. Okay. Well, listen. If you don't have any questions tonight, but you let it marinate and you think about a question later, please reach out to me. There's no issue, or come back to this video and leave the comment question and I'll definitely answer it for you. And so tomorrow I do not have an interview. So I'm going to be back on this bitch tomorrow with the next chapter. I just can't guarantee a time, but it's definitely going to be somewhere between 7 and 8, okay? That's it. Make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thank you so much for hanging out with me tonight. I love you all so much. And remember, this is how we grow. Bye, guys.